Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
I'm sorry, John. I had to play it again.
Do we have unrestricted rights to use that, Brad?
Yes, sir, we do.
Oh, it's fantastic. What an arrangement you have set up, Brad. That's incredible.
The BJ Show. They're the ones to follow, right?
They're the ones to follow. Only though, Brad.
Right.
Only if you want to lose control.
We're like they're the ones to follow, and if our followers, unfortunately, are the ones that come behind us at the end of a parade where there's horses in it, where the guys have the wheelbarrows and shovels, if you know what I'm saying.
That's true.
You're picking up. Okay, I've got some text here, and am I okay to talk about? Can I mention the C word? And I don't mean the C word, but you know what I'm talking about. She's texting you, both you and I. Okay.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. She's a listener to our show.
And it's okay to mention her? She's not going to get mad at me?
Well, yeah, I'm sure she wouldn't be upset. No, go ahead.
Camellia Peterson texted both you and I, and she said, interesting aside, the St. Louis City Caucus, the Central Committee chair told me they had approximately 150 people attend. Of those, 100 were new to her. So for them, they gained more contacts who are more likely to get involved in anything, plus some new people that filed to run for committee. So these are, and you're saying the people that show up for the caucus are all like the dyed in the wool political people, and according to what Camellia says, in the city they weren't. They were new people, right?
Yeah. And what's really interesting about that, so I think we take a step back and we look historically at this, and I have two great anecdotes for this, Brad, where I think there's two lessons that folks in Republican politics should pay attention to, and that is, I lived through 1996, Brad, and we had a big battle that year between Bob Dole and people who were not for Bob Dole. And I was a Phil Gramm guy. He was a senator from Texas. And there were also a whole lot of people that year, Brad, that supported Pat Buchanan for president. Now, younger folks probably don't remember that, but Pat Buchanan was a populist Republican before populism was cool. And Buchanan had a ton of new people that he brought into the process. Same thing happened with Ron Paul in 2012 in the caucuses. The challenge, Brad, if you're a state rep candidate or a committee person or a state party leader or whoever, is when you have an influx of new people who are motivated by the cult of personality, what commonality do they have with your party platform? What can you show them that your party platform and your positions have in common with their pet candidate? And can you keep them around, Brad? And the cynic in me, who lived through 1996 and lived through 2012, says not many of them stay around, Brad. Now, this year's different because there wasn't a contested Republican primary, and there was no reason to come to a caucus because you had to save Donald Trump. But the challenge is, to your point in the previous break, Brad, I consider your friend Larry Mondello talked about a like a numbers game. Think of it. I always think of it as a funnel, Brad. And you have a ton of people. If you have 150 people at the top of the funnel at a Republican caucus event, as that funnel goes down, how many real activists, grassroots leaders, and candidates can you pull from that funnel?
I get what you're saying. And by the way, I think you missed the ultimate cult of personality, the Barack Obama people that came out for him, because he was the ultimate. People came out of the woodwork for Barack Obama.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and he had the advantage of being the first significant black candidate since Jesse Jackson.
Right. Also, you mentioned Pat Buchanan. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Pat Buchanan worked in St. Louis at the Globe Democrat, the old newspaper.
He did, yeah. He was an editorial writer for the Globe Democrat. People will be shocked to know, youngsters will be shocked to know, that there was once a conservative daily newspaper in St. Louis.
Yes.
And it had Democrat in its name.
Well, the interesting part of it was the Globe Democrat was the morning paper, the Post-Dispatch was the afternoon paper, and when the Globe Democrat disappeared, and my sister used to work there, when the Globe Democrat ceased to exist, the Post went to mornings. Or maybe they did that before. I can't remember, but that was the way it was. You had the morning paper, which was the Globe, and you had the night paper, which was the Post-Dispatch. Okay, a couple other things to mention now. I'm going back to Camellia Peterson, okay? And she says, Brad should totally check out Pearl's Twitter. Who is Pearl?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So Brad, there's been a phenomenon. Do you pay much attention to, I have a feeling the answer is no, but the so-called manosphere?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, it's like the part of the internet where it's men who get together and largely argue over male issues. But there's a woman named, I always want to call her Pearly Evans, but that was Phil Clay's district director. Pearly Evans, I just said the name again. Pearly Davis, I think, is her name. And she started off as an influencer. Yeah, that's her name. Pearl. She goes by Pearly Things. And Brad, that's Pearly, and then Things is Things. And you should look it up while we talk. So Pearl Davis goes out, and originally I think she did some dating shows. She did like some content based around dating and advice for women. I don't even know how to best summarize her, but what I would say is I would describe her as an anti-feminist. I think Camellia Peterson and others would call her as a pseudo-feminist or a feminist light, as Austin Petersen would say. But Pearly has a lot of, I think, really prescient ideas about modern feminism, the hypocrisy of living in a gynocentric era in which we pedestalize everything female and we constantly put down men. Now, I would point people to a conversation that our friend Camellia Peterson had with Austin Petersen on his show on Tuesday, Brad, because Austin, it was Tuesday morning, and they talked a lot about the idea of modern feminism. And are you familiar with Tradcon women, Brad?
Man, you're schooling me this morning. No, I have no idea what that is.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you why you love this. Because we know that this is all about eyeballs and getting attention. So there are women that are called Tradcon women, Brad, and that stands for traditional conservative women. And so they'll make a 67 YouTube short, and you should do yourself a favor in checking these out, Brad. And they will dress in something that shows off a tremendous amount of bountiful cleavage, and they will be in their kitchen and they'll be baking a cake, and they'll be saying, I disagree with the idea of modern feminism, of getting every woman into the workplace. I cook for my man. I believe that a woman should keep a home, should honor her man, and should do whatever the man says. And so millions of men watch these videos and say, yeah, that's the kind of woman I want. And, we call her Tradcons because she's a traditional conservative, yet she's using her femininity for clicks. Now, Camellia, Pearly, a lot of other people have weighed in on this. And it seems like the silly thing about it is I think everybody takes sides and everybody says Pearly is great, Pearly is not great. Camellia and Austin had a fantastic argument about Pearl the other day on Austin's show. But to me, Brad, the fascinating thing about it is you have a lot of women who are arguing about feminism and questioning traditional feminism and also using sex to sell their own content. By the way, you would love some of these cake videos, Brad. And as Austin Petersen has pointed out, what man who's scrolling YouTube or Instagram doesn't want to see a woman cooking delicious food and see her possibilities? You get what I'm saying, Brad?
John, I guess I'm the guy because I would rather watch somebody dissect a 1968 Corvette with an L88 package. That was more my.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wouldn't say she's 88, but this chick is at least 36 or 38, Brad. I mean, it's depending on what size you're in.
I'm not going to touch that. Okay, I'm looking it up. I can't find Pearly, P-A-R-L-Y.
Yeah, and then Thing, and then Z.
All together? Together?
Yeah,
or
all one thing. Yeah, she's on Twitter.
Thing.
So if you go to her Twitter now, like the top video, she has, by the way, Brad, 422,000 followers.
I cannot find her. Okay, well, hold on a minute. Let me go back out here. Okay, one more time. Pearly.
Yeah, and then Thing.
INGZ.
And then the letter Z. Yes, Z. Like Z as the Europeans.
Okay, H. Pearl Davis, is this her?
Yes, that's her.
Okay, so, I know who this is. I've seen her on, I think I've seen her.
You've seen her on everything, Brad.
Yeah, she's been all over the place. Matter of fact, she shows up I've seen her on. I've seen her on who's the British guy that came in the United States and
he came Piers Morgan.
yes, I've seen her
Yeah.
on, and he's back in England, isn't he? Back in England on his own show, or is he back at Fox? He's somewhere.
I don't know, but yeah. So she's done Piers before. Yeah, she's done a really good job in the last few months of getting these high profile spots. Now, my favorite content creators, Brad. Probably my favorite content creator is a guy named Rollo Tomassi, who's an influential voice in the men's space, and all men should check out Rollo. But Rollo is convinced that Pearl is just a grifter and that she's in this just, to make a few bucks. Camellia Peterson believes that in a few years, and I happen to believe this as well, I think Pearl in a few years will not revoke. I think she will go back and say, you know what, I was wrong. I think she will pivot, so to speak. And I think that this thing will run her course for her, and then she'll probably go on and talk about other stuff.
Okay, it says his 1.9 million on YouTube. I comment on societal trends. American based in London. So that's why she's on Pierce. I think Pierce is back on Sky TV or something like that in London.
Okay.
So that's why I see her on Piers Morgan little clips all the time, because she's in London and she's in the studio.
Yeah. But let's talk about her ideas. What I like about Pearl is that, and here's where it's funny, and this is where part of the Austin conversation with Camellia came in. Pearl takes so much of her content from the foundational bedrock of messages that come from. I have right here on my desk, Brad. I have it in my hands now. The original book called The Rational Male, which is by Rollo Tomassi. So Pearl says a lot of things that have been said for years by guys like Rollo Tomassi, but because she says it in an inflammatory way. So here's my favorite example of a Pearl tweet, Brad. I think her best tweet was like 6 months ago. And Pearl's in her 20s, I believe. Pearl will simply put a tweet out, Brad, that says, look, no woman in her 40s is nearly as hot as a woman in her 20s. Sorry, ladies. And what will happen, Brad? You predict, because you know social media, what happens with a single tweet like that?
I don't know. Tell me.
Women immediately respond to her and say, how dare you? Look at this picture of me, and I am looking good, and I am 41. And then, so you have every woman in her comments saying, how dare you talk about us like that and reduce us to our looks? And then every thirst trap woman is like, I'm 37. Look at me arching my back on vacation in a bikini. Comment on this. And then what do you have, Brad? Then you have literally hundreds of guys that will go to that 37-year-old woman's thirst trap and say, looking good, gorgeous. Pearl doesn't know what she's talking about. I think you're beautiful. And who does this benefit, Brad? Pearl. Because Pearl gets millions, Brad. Millions of engagements or millions of impressions and thousands of engagements just by making a sentence like this, Brad. No woman in her 40s is nearly as hot as she was in her 20s.
Okay, I'm a Starstat guy, and you don't know what Starstat is. Do you know what Starstat is?
You've explained it to me many times, yes.
Starstat.yt. Yes, it's a .weird. It's the .weird top level domain. What this guy's done is this guy's somewhere like in the Red Sea or something like that, some weird country I've never heard of. That's what .yt is. You type in someone's handle on YouTube. So in other words, whatever their screen name is on YouTube, and it tells you what they're worth. Okay, her YouTube channel is just Pearly Things. Okay, her YouTube channel is worth, as of the 5th of April, which is today, $4.2 million.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, average, she makes $9,790 a day. Her weekly average is $68,000. Her monthly average is $297,000. And in a year, right now, she's estimated to make $3.5 million a year. Now, then it gives you the daily amount of what she made, and it goes back for 2 weeks. Yesterday, she made $221. Wednesday, she made $12,864. Tuesday, she made $16,496, and on April 1st, she made $33,525.
And that's only by YouTube. That's not from other engagements, Brad.
God, man, John, how come we can't pull those kind of numbers?
What it is engagement farming. And so you say something ridiculous, And then you just watch people. Now imagine, Brad, you're that 37-year-old woman or that 41-year-old woman. You just can't help responding to a Pearl tweet because you internalize it, you make it about yourself, and you say, if I post a sexy picture of me, I know men are going to say, sexy. And so that's what Pearl does. It reminds me of the old Onion headline, Brad, which was heartbreaking. The worst person you know just made a great point. Now, I don't care, particularly, if Pearl goes out and takes the foundational bedrock messages that have been shared by real leaders like Rollo Tomassi, guys like Cooper, Rian Stone. Those are my 3 favorite male content creators. My 3 favorite content creators, period. I don't care if she rips them off, essentially, and takes credit for it. What I like about it is that more men are getting those messages. More men are standing up for themselves. Now, if I was Rollo and Ryan and Rich, I'd probably feel some type of way that somebody's ripping off my stuff and getting a lot of credit for it. But if you care about the promulgation of good ideas, Brad, then you don't care about who gets the credit for it.
Well, John, so far this morning, you say things that people, have an opinion of. So far, you've said about 42 things that at least the women in the audience. I mean, let's say those women who in their comfy shoes,
with FUPAs,
who haven't shaved their legs in a while, right? That was another one of the John Combest quotes from earlier this morning. I'm thinking to myself, you've offended. See, now if you're on Westplex 107.1, you've offended 80% of our audience right there. I mean,
that's good. And also, and the thing is too, though, I know, Brad, that the women that are listening to this, if you're already listening to the show, you're coming back from Jeff City, you're driving around picking the kids up. I'm picturing the women I know that listen to our show. You're secure enough to know, hey, I shaved my legs yesterday. Hey, I put on a good looking pair of shoes. Hey, I cranked out a few kids and I didn't let myself go. They're not offended by this, Brad. And if you're offended by what a guy says on a radio show and you internalize it, you should probably just stop listening.
But what about the guys who'd shaved their legs yesterday and cranked out?
Hey, and Brad, you might not have heard this, but in the second segment, I talked about the guys that have let themselves go, that have put on a ton of weight, that wear their New Balance shoes and their poorly sized jeans and can't see their genitals when they use the urinal, Brad. We've already covered them. It applies to everyone. And even, Brad, next week, we're going to talk about how it applies to non-binaries. Because we shouldn't just target men and women, Brad. We should talk about the FUPAs on non-binaries. We set a lot of ground this week. Brad, in segment B, can you label that FUPAs and beavers?
No, I'm not going to label it FUPAs and beavers.
What about FUPAs, the unshaved, and beavers? Or is that pushing it, Brad?
John, did you have too much caffeine this morning?
I'm just finishing my coffee. Next week, can we talk about landing strips?
No,
and I'm talking about airplanes, Brad. I'm talking about Lambert, like watching a good, a little landing strip, a little cotton candy.
We're not talking about that. Okay. We're not. Let me think this morning. I learned what a FUPA was. I learned what a Tradcon was.
Yeah.
See,
Brad, invest a little time in Tradcon videos.
Now,
look up cake in the kitchen, something like that, Brad.
I told you that when we ran on not this station, but on the other station, on The Mouth, when we ran the Neil Bortz show, he had a dictionary, like a glossary on his website. And he would say from time to time, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my website and everything's there. So he had all the things defined. We need to do that because he had AMF and, because if he got mad at a caller or something like that, he would hit the button, he would cut him off and he'd say, AMF.
AMF. And as a weekend reminder, Brad, right. Brush those snack crumbs off your FUPA. And that applies to men and women.
John, you know what? Before we leave...
Brad, did you eat your Little Debbie's this morning? Did you have any snack crumbs on your belly?
No, I did not. Before we leave, one more time.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Now, I ask you, can you see the American flag flying behind you and I on the air? Can you see a big hunk of apple pie sitting in front of us? Can you see?
Oh, Brad, I love it. Delicious. The only thing I like better than a piece of apple pie is a big, delicious peach.
Can you see? Someone on, standing in front of the White House,
Yeah, or by the
saluting,
Statue of Liberty.
saluting the flag? That's the Brad and John show. Okay, we are way over this morning, and it's all your damn fault with your FUPAs and Tradcons. Have a good weekend,
Have a
John.
great weekend, everybody.